Hey everyone, Tiago here, and welcome to Classical Controllers, where I am obsessed with finding the best controller for every platform. Today, we're going to get started with a Battle Beaver controller. Now, this isn't just any Battle Beaver, this is going to be a fully customized PlayStation 5 Battle Beaver controller with their new TMR sticks, the Magnetto Mechs as they call it. So this is no longer a regular potentiometer. These are going to have TMR, which is certainly the biggest thing they've launched recently. I'm going to review this controller. I'm going to talk about in different sections every single component. And we're also going to talk about if it's worth it to get a customizable controller like this. Obviously, it's more expensive than a stock Sony controller. And if you guys like hearing about the best controllers on the market, remember to subscribe and smash that like button. All right, so let's take a look at the controller. Let's start with the aesthetics first. This is going to be a limited edition Final Fantasy 16 shell. When you customize your controller on Battle Beaver, you can choose like a stock PlayStation 5 controller look, for example, or you can customize it with all sorts of different, soft shell finishes, ones with different graphical designs. I didn't have this limited edition one, so I thought it looked pretty cool, and I thought, why not? Let's get this one. So I really do like the aesthetics of it. I chose to do like a light blue thumbsticks just so it matches. There's a little bit of blue on the touchpad. Throughout the video, you're also going to be listening to the sounds of this controller because it's extremely tactile, and you'll pretty much hear that everything sounds. This is a mouse, and then this is the controller. So the aesthetics of it, absolutely beautiful. Now, this has the smart pad, which we're going to talk about for both the buttons and the D-pad, which basically gives you Omron switches, and it sounds like a mouse click. When you select that option, you can only do either white or black buttons. If you don't have that option, then you can do various colors of buttons. So with that option, white buttons or black buttons, and there's a good reason for that because they're custom buttons. So in terms of the aesthetics, there's not too much going on. Like the stock controller would have had black, PlayStation 5 thumbsticks. This one just has their Pro thumbsticks with the light blue, the white underneath to match the white buttons. Everything else is the same. On some of them, you can also have a different trim piece, and then the back is pretty much the stock controller. You have, the Final Fantasy 16 stock, but you do have 4 buttons. These happen to have the blue caps. You can also get beaver tails and things like that. So now let's talk about the actual mechanical face. Obviously, this is a stock PlayStation 5 controller that it starts its life as, and then Battle Beaver are going to customize it and modify it. So let's talk about the D-pad and the face buttons. If you can hear here, these are going to be the smart pad. Both, you can obviously get the option of just the D-pad or just the buttons here. Basically, they put like Omron switches underneath, which is from somebody who has built his own controllers, and I like tinkering with that stuff. That's actually, it's fairly difficult to do because you have to get a special, FPC ribbon that you can actually put the switches in there. Then you have to have, custom size buttons so it fits because it's not the same tolerance as if you had the standard, PlayStation 5 buttons. So that's something that is definitely impressive, and they certainly do it the best that I've ever heard. So in terms of the button feel, I could definitely recommend getting this option. Obviously, it's going to add some to the price, but I'd like to have both. I would say the most important one, if you want a budget, would be the face buttons, and then the D-pad. Even though you don't use it that much, you use it for menus and for things like that. So it's not like it's going to give you an advantage in games unless you're playing a fighting game. Then obviously you're going to want it. For the most part, it's super satisfying. I'm very into the actual clickiness and the tactile feedback of the controller, which is a big thing, or else you would just get a cheap controller, right? That's part of the big thing, how it feels. So the face buttons, very, very nice. Everything feels great. Certainly, I recommend getting this on every single controller if you can. A lot of different companies and third-party controllers will have micro switches under. So there's a lot of options out there on the market, but not too many on stock PlayStation 5 controllers. They're one of the only few places that actually do this. If you've built your own controllers with like extreme rate, they do have clicky kits for the face. but they don't currently make any that actually have arm-on switches. They're going to be more tactile buttons, which are not exactly the same level, the same crispy sound as something like this. Of course, another option that they offer is the touchpad. Listen to that. The same mouse click on the touchpad itself. This is something that I probably would not use myself, but clicking on the touchpad is very, very satisfying. And if there is a game where you do need to, do faster movements, the idea is you can map something like jump to the touchpad and you can go really fast. I haven't used it for that purpose. I just like that it's clicky, which is fine. But it's definitely something you can get. It's not too expensive an option. I think it adds like $10 to the build. So that, very, very cool. And it just makes the entire controller just a little more beefy. If you're getting like all these options already, definitely very, very cool. Going down, now, those are the only things that are clicky up there. But then here, both of these also have their what they call their smart sticks. When you press down L3 and R3, like to run, like in Call of Duty or Ghost of Tsushima, if you're playing a single player game, this is how this sounds like with their smart sticks. You can hear it's very different than a typical PlayStation 5, a stock PlayStation 5 controller. So this is supposed to be a little bit easier to actually makes it a little bit easier to actuate. Feels really good. It's not quite the same volume of click as the face buttons, but it's pretty close, and you can tell it's certainly different. It makes the stick nice and light. And of course, you can also have different levels of tension. You can have increased or decreased tension. For example, some people on the right stick like to have increased tension. That way it's easier to aim and move around or something like that. But remember, this particular build with the TMR Magnetto, I decided just to do stock tension. Part of the reason the Battle Beaver took a while to develop the Magnetto Mechs is that you can actually adjust the tension on these TMR sticks. I happen to kind of just like the stock tension. If anything, I have a few controllers of theirs that have it on the right stick. On the left stick, I don't like increased tension because that's when you're trying to run. It just kind of feels a little bit too heavy. But on the right stick, definitely what I would like. But this one, I decided just to do the stock. So this is going to be the TMR, what they call Magnetto Mechs. So basically, the point of this is to avoid potential issues with stick drift and things of that nature. Obviously, it does have other benefits as well. Hall effects is where sort of this whole trend started, and now we've moved on to TMR, which you're not going to feel a massive difference, but TMR technically is a little bit better with like the power draw on the controller. It can be more accurate, so it certainly has a lot of benefits on paper. Doesn't mean you'll feel them necessarily, but for a controller that's like built to this caliber, it feels nice knowing you have something that you greatly reduce any chance of stick drift. Obviously, you can always have stick drift issues even with Hall effects or TMR based on what happens with the hardware. It's just a lot less likely to happen. And then this does come pre-calibrated from Battle Beaver when you get the controller itself. Of course, there's a website for the DualShock controllers where you can calibrate it yourself if you ever need to tweak it or something like that. But I'm just going to leave it the way that they that they brought it. I'm going to show you on the screen gamepad tester and basically how it looks like, and you can make your own judgment. You can see if you move the sticks around, it kind of goes right back to the center. And those are the values there that you see. And also if you rotate it, you take a look at the rotation, and then you take a look at what you get there on the screen. And then this, every controller is different. Every TMR stick seems to have different characteristics. So you can kind of judge for yourself and compare. In using it, it just does definitely feel really good, really accurate. Obviously, it's diminishing returns in terms of feel compared to a potentiometer, traditional thumbstick that doesn't really have any issues, but this does give you a little bit of peace of mind, and it's a very nice option. It adds about $36 to the build price, so not only is it going to give you a good peace of mind that you have this in your controller, it might be a little more accurate, it may make you play a little bit better, even though those things are always up for debate. But let's say in the future you want to change your controller or do something like that. Certainly it's going to make it easier to resell it if you tell somebody it has TMR, because then they're not going to be, basically worried about having, drift issues. That's why a lot of people get rid of controllers, because it starts drifting. So that's going to be a nice selling point. So overall, this is one of the best like face of a PlayStation 5 controller that you can get on the market, period. The DualSense Edge, while that's a fantastic controller, it is nowhere near the level of this controller. You know, that one is going to have good but just standard membrane buttons. You know, everything feels okay. This one takes it to the next level. Now, if it's going to improve your gameplay or not is certainly something that's going to be subjective. But if you like the controller in general, there's a chance it may, especially because it is easier to push. You get that instant response. It just feels good to use. So overall, definitely one of the the best done type of faces with buttons, the touchpad, and you have your TMR sticks, which was the one thing that Battle Beaver controllers were missing previously compared to some of the competitors. If you've noticed, even Scuff just introduced their Valor Pro Xbox controller that has Hall effects now. It's Hall effects and not TMR. So, most companies are going in that direction because it's what the market is demanding. So we're going to be seeing a lot of these. So as we go up, another essential feature, especially if you're going to be playing FPS games, are going to be the smart triggers and the smart bumpers as well. I always like to get the smart bumpers together with the smart triggers just because at first, once again, it makes it very satisfying. Even though the PlayStation 5 stock controller has pretty good bumpers, it makes it extremely satisfying already. And these are going to be obviously Omron switches as well. So it's a very, very nice satisfying click. And the actuation distance is absolutely perfect on these. It's not too short, not too long. It's a very, very nice little press. Some controllers have a little bit too hard of a press when they do these type of switches. That it all depends on the tolerance inside. So Battle Beaver, when they do this, they of course have somebody who really knows how to build controllers. I'm not just saying, oh, they're great. I'm saying I can feel that whoever built this and whatever system they have in place for button placement and, because you can do different mounting systems and brackets, whatever they've decided to do, it's obviously fine tuned by people who really know how something feels that it's great. Because I've built these myself as well. And it's hard sometimes to get the perfect feel. Even if I use the exact same parts, it could even be the exact same mounting position. Sometimes it needs a little more tolerance to just feel better. So you can tell this is really, really nicely done. It's craftsmanship. That's why I really like controllers as well. Obviously, the only caveat here, if you're going to be playing games on the PlayStation 5 or on the PC, that take advantage of the adaptive triggers. If you do these smart triggers, you're going to lose that functionality. Like for example, in Horizon Forbidden West, or if when you pull the trigger all the way, you may feel different levels of like a bow and arrow, or in Helldivers, you may feel different levels of a weapon or something like that. So for those games, yeah, then you may be losing out on some things that it's not so great. Then you may either want to get a different controller or use a stock controller. Of course, you can order it without these as well, even though I think for me, it makes up a big part of why the controller is great. And believe it or not, I use these triggers to play almost like, I would say 95% of games. I've even played games that are like racing games, and that's another reason why people like to get regular triggers. Because in racing, obviously, you have to sort of modulate the gas and the brake. And if it's a more serious racing game, you don't want to use this, obviously, but more like an arcade type of racing game, then it's not as big of a problem. But for racing, obviously, you probably want the other type of triggers. They offer the regular triggers. They used to have something called racer triggers. I have it on an Xbox Battle Beaver controller. And basically, you still get that click, but it goes down all the way. So basically, you can still actuate the entire distance of the trigger. They're okay. They nowhere near as satisfying as this. It takes a little while for it to bottom out, and it doesn't have quite that snap that this does, but it is an option. You do get that little clicky thing. I think now they may still offer it, but you have to actually request it. I haven't seen it up on the builder or anything like that. So these triggers, absolutely fantastic. The bumper and the back, extremely satisfying, and just makes reactions like in Call of Duty and things like that, absolutely fantastic. As we go towards the back, you can get various different grips. I've tried. They have the grips that are more. They have a more texture to them. This one is just going to be because I wanted this sort of as close as possible to the stock limited edition Final Fantasy 16 controller, and that's one of the advantages of them doing the buttons is that they don't have to have a rear different shell with different paddles or something like that. You can just use the same one. You see, it says Final Fantasy 16, just like if you bought the controller stock. So this one, you're going to notice it has just a regular grip, which is fine. I really like this PlayStation grip. At first, I used to think, oh, you need a textured grip, a rubber grip on the PlayStation 5 controller. That's like a must-have feature. And then I felt some of even the regular PlayStation 5 controller, grip feels good. And even some of the soft touch ones are by far my favorite. You can get soft touch in different colors. Battle Beaver offers it on their builders as well as other, controller companies. So the soft touch is definitely my favorite. This is the standard one. It's good. It has a little bit of a texture, but then you see you're going to have 4 of the back buttons. These are going to be regular button caps, and you could also get what they call a beaver tail, which is just a little bit more of a textured button. So here I got 4 blue. If you get the regular buttons, you can choose a few different colors. If you get the beaver tails, you choose black or white. You can also buy them separately. These are just standard little button covers. If you want to switch to black in the future or something else, that's also possible. Here, I have the top 2 buttons mapped out. Basically, just for the 4, face buttons. This is going to be a PlayStation 5 controller. So then you're going to have X up here, O, and then, triangle and square on the bottom. You can also get a remap chip here. So then what you do, you hold the top 2 paddles like this, and then you're going to press the mic button. And when you press the mic button for a few seconds, you're going to see the touchpad flashing. And then you hold down the back paddle or the back button that you want to map to. You hold down the actual button. You let go of the back paddle, let go of the button, and then it's going to be mapped to it. Then you just press the mic button in the middle here. The remapping is fairly easy. And you can remap whatever button to it. But I kind of like to keep just in that traditional, the 4 buttons in the back, doing the 4 buttons here. On the face, you can even add more of the buttons. You can have up to 6, which is pretty crazy. I have one of their Xbox controllers with 6. You have to really get used to using it. A lot of people do the last 2 for like L2, L3, and R3, like for running, so you don't have to hold down the sticks. You have to really get used to it and train yourself to do that. In some games, I find that just the top 2 buttons are sufficient. I got 4 because once in a while I do like to use the other ones, and I think it's good to have them there. So that's certainly a great feature. The buttons, as opposed to the actual paddles, it depends on the controller company, to be honest. First, I think buttons are excellent. Ergonomically, they're great. They have a really nice snap. You can hear it there. Very, very nice snap with the tactile switches that they use. I believe they're Omron switches as well, something like a BFS 1062 or something like that. It could be different ones. I haven't opened this one up to take a look. So they're very satisfying, very, very easy to press. They're in pretty nice positions. You can choose like standard high, low positions if you wanted to change these around, so they don't have to be set here. They're evenly done, of course, because this is basically just drilling in the back, so you have to either have a mold or make sure you're doing it in the right place. I've done these before, and if you just do it by eye, your hole is going to be off a little bit, so it's nice to have a mold or at least a template. So they do a very good job at that. The build quality, certainly exceptional, and I really like buttons. I think they're one of the best systems that you can have for back paddles or back buttons. There are other companies as well that have really great designs. For example, like AIM controllers have the spider-looking paddles. Those are absolutely fantastic, extremely tactile. They feel pretty incredible. Sometimes I prefer to have paddles, sometimes buttons. I think these are both done really, really well, and they have their different purposes, and it's going to depend on what you like and what you get used to. So that's the back of the controller. So overall, the controller is very, very tactile. Obviously, if there are any drawbacks, it's expensive. So, a stock PlayStation controller, like usually a limited edition one, they'll be $84.99 if you get it from Sony when it comes out or something like that. Something like this, it hasn't been available for a while, so you have to go on eBay, for example, for like the Final Fantasy version. But like, let's say the Helldivers controller that came out recently, $84.99. So then something like this, you can obviously change options to adjust the price. This one has basically every single option that you can. It's aside from a few small things like 6 buttons that I didn't want to get, and maybe if you change the color scheme, it might be a little more expensive if you add more of the aesthetics. So this was already over $350, with the shipping and after the discount. So that is certainly not cheap at all, considering the DualSense Edge is around $200. But you're not getting the same level of customization and the same level of tactile feel as this controller. That controller does not feel anywhere near what this one feels like. That one may be okay for most people, but if you really want the next level, if you want to find out what the best feeling PlayStation 5 controller is, this is 100% confident that this is it. I've tried literally everything, and while there are other controllers tied with it that are literally just as good, this is definitely tied for first place with whatever else you can put there. I've tested everything from the SCUF controllers, the AIM controllers I would put right next to this because I absolutely love those paddles. It's a different system than this, but they're fantastic. Absolutely love those paddles as well, and their design and the feel of the controllers. They also have digital buttons, although they sound different. And the build quality is exceptional in some ways. Something like that is even more impressive because they use like custom tailored paddles in the back. They have a different shell. They have a little bit more going on, so you can tell, AIM controllers and Battle Beaver, whoever's behind these companies, they really like a fine-tuned controller and they know what they're doing. That's really at the end of the day. So pricing for some will be an issue. You can obviously spec out, like they have their Pro picks that will just have 2 back buttons and the smart triggers and the smart bumpers. Those are going to be cheaper. You may be able to get them for closer or under $200 depending on the sales that they have and things like that. They also offer these variations just as like a smart pad version. So with the TMR Magnetto sticks, we're going to add $36 basically to any of those. So you're going to be closer up there to a little bit under 300, possibly for like their smart pad Pro pick, for example. I chose to customize this one, even though it was a little bit more, because then I can actually change the thumbstick color. I didn't want just the regular stock black DualSense thumbsticks. You can also, I wanted to add more buttons in the back. So basically those couple of things, it changes the price a little bit, but I think it's nicer to add a few bucks and just get what you want on the controller itself. And then obviously you could add the remap chip if you want to be able to remap the buttons as well, which is definitely a recommended option, especially on a controller that you're already spending this much money on. But if you're always going to use those same 4 buttons for the same face buttons, not really that big of a deal. So overall, in my opinion, that's why I wanted to start with this. I think it's one of the best examples of what you can do on the PlayStation 5 controllers. The tactile feel, everything here is just absolutely tremendous. And obviously, the build time could take a little bit long. I got Beaver Boost on this one, so it came pretty quick within about 10 days. I'm in the US, so that's very, very impressive. If you don't get it, I've bought a lot of controllers from them in the past. Some could take a month, maybe 2 months if it's a custom one, if it's really a really busy season. So Beaver Boost, definitely, it's recommended that you get that. So that's not counting the cost of over $350. Then that takes it closer to $400. But you get your controller much faster if it's something you don't really want to wait for. And they have different options like the quick pick that, the quick pick that I got for Xbox, for example, with the smart pad took almost exactly 1 month. I got one of the Forza 5 Horizon with the smart pad for both the D-pad and the different buttons. We'll be taking a look at that one as well as their PlayStation 4 controllers. They also have Nintendo Switch controllers, as well as different controllers, the SCUF, AIM, even the DualSense Edge stock Xbox controllers, Hex Gaming. We'll be taking a look at all those on the channel. So remember to subscribe if you like controller content. Let me know what you think down below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.